My panelists on today's edition are Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relationships and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director of Enough is Enough, and Jide Ologun, Legal Practitioner and National Development Advocate. There was drama at the Lagos State House of Assembly last Monday as the men of the Department of State Services barricaded the offices of some of the principal officers, including the Speaker. The situation degenerated as lawmakers made move into the chamber for the day's business. In the end, the legislators prevailed, conducted their plenary, condemned what they described as an invasion of their hallowed chamber, and called on higher authorities to investigate the matter. Arise News Chief Correspondent Tokunbo Oyetunji sent in this report.
A house of drama that aptly describes the situation here at the Lagos House of Assembly on Monday morning. Members and staff wake up to find armed strangers in their midst, their mission unclear to all. Shortly, the Speaker joins our colleagues at a waiting area within the premises and they deliberate. They then decide to ignore the armed security personnel barricading the offices of principal officers, including that of the Speaker and the Assembly chamber. It is tough, but they are determined and are joined by supportive members of staff of the Assembly as they gain entrance into the chamber. Some call on God for intervention, but still a hurdle to cross, getting the Speaker in. Finally, she's in, and the day's business begins in earnest with a matter of urgent public importance raised by Kehinde Joseph, Limosho Constituency 1.
They are persuaded the House of the Assembly. You don't know what really happens. So what we saw this morning, it surprised us. And some of the members that are even having health challenges, some of them are going to, they are just one of them to hospital, Ologun, ensure. And we are not of others to see people with weapons in the chamber. This is the Lagos State House of Assembly, as a former standard of excellence. Whatever the situation, whatever the problems, I don't know you to come to this
More of his colleagues join him to condemn the invasion of the Assembly premises and call for an investigative action.
What we see today, I don't know what we are going to tell today. That's, we have to force ourselves to our own chamber. And I knew that all our elders, all our leaders that stood for the moment of Lagos will not be happy seeing what we saw today.
Only to find that they do not want us to see what is our sin. For the DSS to say we cannot see that people again, that we cannot be one. What is our sin? Is it a sin for us to elect a defense officer? We need to know. Those against saying they are things.
Then, the other business of the day, a vote of confidence on Speaker Mojisola Miranda.
I move the motion to say that we do pass a vote of confidence on Right Honorable Mojisola Miranda. Allow Speaker to advance decision by the Speaker.
Motion carried. Emotional Miranda hits the gavel and the house erupts in jubilation. House adjourns.
This house stands adjourned to say
It is an indefinite adjournment. Where does the House go from here? Will Lagos' first female speaker return to her seat, or she has just had the last hit of the gavel? We certainly need more time to get the answers. Tokunbo Oyetunji, Arise News, Lagos.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Professor Aworawo, good to see you. Jide, Ologun, and Yemi, Adamolekun. We've got into the Lagos State story straight away. Before then, we've had two guests. We've had Dr. Akin Fakponda, with whom we discussed the Abuja event, i.e. the IBB book launch, and we moved on to talk about the elections in Osun State, i.e. the local government election. And then we had Fred Nzako. We discussed with him as well the local government election and the ramification across the country. To make matters more complicated for you, we've added the Lagos State Assembly. So let's take your views on that, then we'll delve on each of these issues. Prof.
It is interesting, the three key issues that the guest spoke about and this last report that was just presented. There's something that runs through the three.
Yes.
And that thing is the state of Nigerian politics and the approach of Nigerian leaders to governance in the country. It's a do or die affair. And that is reflected in these three. To begin with the Lagos episode, since the impeachment of Obasa a couple of weeks ago, the House of Assembly and by extension politics in Lagos has been unstable. They even arrested some members of the House of Assembly and took them to DSS office. Some members of the House of Assembly had to go there to protest and insisted that these members must be released before they left.
Well, maybe those ones arrested, we'll finally get to know them because most of them are anonymous. We don't even know what they stand for.
Well, everybody is trying to place, they don't want to offend certain people. And that is influencing their response to what is happening. There are many people who are not happy with certain things, but they are unable to speak out because the influences on some of these things happening. Yeah. They don't want to, go
Which
there.
goes back to your intro, the state of affairs of our politics.
Exactly. Well, the House has impeached Obasa, and Miranda has been elected as the Speaker. It is really surprising that people just can't let sleeping dogs lie. Obasa wants to come back by force, by fire.
This is a sleeping dog that is lying down on a big piece of meat, but go ahead. It's not just...
He wants to come back by force. He went to Abuja, he saw the president. It seemed that the president at some point agreed with him that his impeachment is illegal, as he claims. And that seemed to have emboldened him. But I want to commend GAC. They stood their ground and said, look, there were many infractions. And they pointed out all of this to the president. They even invited him when the president was in Lagos, during the New Year, Christmas, New Year break. And he saw for himself how things, unfolded. But, it will appear as if Obasa's perceived influence on Lagos West,
Yes.
Vis-a-vis the large population of Lagos West. Lagos West is larger than Central and East combined. That's where you have Alimosho, Amuwo-Odofin, and the Lagos West. So, there is this feeling that if Obasa is aggrieved and decides to take Lagos West somewhere else, it will affect the calculations for 2027. And so there seems to be some move, to appease Obasa by all means. You hear sometimes they say, Miranda has resigned. Miranda will come and say, I never resigned. In fact, I've read Miranda has resigned more than a dozen times. Miranda will say, I have not resigned. And of course, Miranda is Omeiko.
Yeah.
And, the Omeiko are increasingly becoming assertive that all too often people from outside Lagos have come to dominate Lagos politics. The Obasa is from Abeokuta. Even though there's one Obasa in Ojo that he wants to cling to, those ones have said, no, he doesn't belong here. We know where he's from.
Nice
He's not. So all of those things have played out in the Lagos politics. But I'm very sad, really, because if the transition had been smooth, Obasa was impeached, Miranda was elected, there was no problem. If everybody had just maintained things the way they should be, which is how order should be, established, we'll have just moved on. All of this invasion and no invasion wouldn't have happened. But there's one last thing I want to say about this. The DSS claims that it was the clerk that invited them to come.
Yes.
And that all those who reported about invasion,
Yes.
that they heard. We even heard that some newspaper, media houses have apologized to DSS that they were actually invited, they were not, it was not an invasion. But if it was an invitation, the way, the gangster manner in which they approach the place, if it's an invasion to prevent some lawless people from disrupting the house, that is not how it ought to be done. It's those lawless ones that they will have, faced, and then allow those who want to do legitimate to do their business. But that was not the case. It was the case of the place was, invaded, so to speak, even though they won't want to hear that word. And then the lawmakers were jumping through all sorts of places to get into their own chamber, which was what one of the members there said in the report. So I think the point we have got to now is to just accept the fait accompli that Miranda is now the speaker. They are talking about Central West, that, okay, the governor is from the Central, the senator is from the East. Yeah. Why should, the deputy governor rather, why should Miranda also from the
well, yeah.
Look, they only have 2 years. Let her just do, those neat calculations cannot follow all the time. Because there are times somebody might die, there are times somebody might be impeached, just as it happened like this. The person is not having a full term. Just in 2 years, a little over 2 years thereabout, that era will end. So they should just endure that. The heaven should not fall because Obasa is gone. And in any case, Obasa has so many cases to answer. EFCC case, certificate case. They should be more, because they have indulged him. Yeah. He's not even bothered that anybody can do anything to him on those issues. Those are the issues to be struck. Assuming they have held him to account, he won't be thinking about speakership. You'll be thinking about how to wriggle out of
those cases.
Yeah, those cases. But then let me just comment on the other two.
Yes, please.
Then I'll go to LBB's book. That book launch speaks volume. It links what we are saying.
Yes. State of.
In fact, since was it Wednesday the book launch? Thursday. I've spoken with many young Nigerians. They are so demoralized. Many of them are saying that it will take something extraordinary for them to be committed to Nigeria again. And I can see their feeling. I can feel them because I was also part of the June 12th. I saw how people suffered. People were shot beside me, killed, who were just fighting that, look, somebody has won an election, the person must be president. And now see everybody gathered in Abuja. And behold and lo, it was as if it's something to be commended. This one will come and eulogize IBB, that will come and praise him, that will come and say he made me. The youth are saying, so if this is what Nigeria is, why you waste your time, making sacrifice for the country? That we all fought for, in fact, they are even surprised about the president. But the president also fought for June 12th. Yes, and went into exile. It was a direct, that why will he come and again, the convivial atmosphere. They should be, I will commend them for not keeping malice, inventory, animosity to eternity, that they have forgiven and all that. But the mood shouldn't be what it was. The mood ought to have been more sober. You see, there's an Isoko proverb. Yeah.
Let's have it.
Yes, like that when a young person falls, he looks forward. He gets up and runs and continues running. But when an older person falls, he looks back.
He looks back. And you claim Isoko for that proverb.
Yes. I
won't say anything.
Some other ethnic groups too have said.
Other people will be listening. Yeah, just go ahead.
But at least when I was growing up.
That's where you go.
Yes. These are older men who should not just get up and start running ahead. That was what I saw in Abuja. Yeah. They didn't behave like those older ones who would fall and then look back. It's supposed to be more soberness. And to come to the book itself, I will congratulate Babangida for writing a book and for admitting June 12th. But it's a very poorly written book. Babangida is more than that. There's no evidence. That was the same thing I said about Farotimi's book. Yes. Yeah. You see, how we assess books that are good, the facts they present, and the evidence they provide for those facts.
Documentations and references.
Yes. How can a Babangida, write an autobiography that, I'm sorry to say, pedestrian, no evidence, and he also, clearly there are some lies in the book. Let me just point out one. Yeah. This major one that Bacha and Ihomu's PA or media were the one that Babangida said was in Katsina and all that. if you look at it, we are historians, we look at texts, we look at documents, and
Yes,
we are able to establish truth from it. Before the annulment was announced, there had been measures to stop Nwosu from announcing, and that came from Babangida's office. And then, before then, Babangida had cancelled many of those, election he will cancel, we'll start another one. Yes. So obviously, Babangida wanted to perpetuate himself in office. And the announcement itself was made by him, not anybody else. If the Babacha and some other homos people were trying to do something that he did not like, he would have come to tell them, no. Where we have got up to now, democracy must be established. And heaven will not have fallen. So the attempt to pass the buck to other people is clearly not correct. What is obvious from all the comments is that Babangida wanted to continue in office. Abacha too didn't want Abiola to be in office because he wanted to have his own time. In fact, if he had his own way, he would have done away with Babangida to take over. Okay. But if Abiola had come in, that would made all of that. So both of them were agreed on that. But Babangida does not say that it was Abacha or anybody else. I mean,
you think that's not true? We're going to come back to you, Mr. Jide Ologun. Let's hear you.
Thank you very much. On the case of the Lagos State House of Assembly, I looked at the Constitution in respect of the impeachment of Obasa and what the law says, specifically Section 92 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, is that 2/3 votes will be required to set the leadership aside, which was met, even though he was claiming that he needed to be present physically. But under the concept of the rule of law, he has gone to court. And I expected that status quo will be maintained and allow the judicial intervention until we...
So when you say status quo maintained, that Obasa continues to be speaker?
No, that Miranda has been exactly until the court pronounces.
That will be status quo.
That's the new normal status quo.
Yeah, that will be okay.
You see, and suddenly the DSS came. I don't want to say invasion now, except for the video we saw.
They came.
And one school of thought is saying they were invited. Another school of thought saying they invaded. So I take us back to 2018 when a similar ugly incident happened in Abuja. It was the National Assembly then when Bukola Saraki was the president of the Senate. That DSS came, barricaded the National Assembly, and eventually said it was order from above. And I recall that Osinbajo was the acting president because the then president, Muhammadu Buhari, was on 10-day holiday out of Nigeria.
Well,
and what Osinbajo did was to sack the DG of the DSS, for that infraction. So I'm yet to see the relevant reaction to that attempt to infuriate the spirit of democracy. Because, I mean, the DSS is directly answerable to the executive arm of the government. So where did they come from? Who sent them? For what purpose? And I believe that this will not be one of the issues that will go under the carpet, because the picture being painted is that our politicians may be more interested in the power game than the good governance that should be delivered to the people. Because on the flip side also, there are several allegations against Obasa himself that led to that impeachment. Are we going to prove those allegations, or are they just imaginations of the legislators, like how Onohe was moved out as the CJN and the Magu as the acting chairman of EFCC then, on allegations that were never prosecuted? And that brings us to the book of IBB. It's still the same power game. They are all friends. You see, I remember that at a time, even the present president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had to run out of the country when he was one of the arrowheads of NADECO, those who confronted the fact that democracy must be restored. But when power comes, they all become friends again. And it's so traumatizing, when I read deeply into it, that MKO himself was a very close friend of IBB.
And Abacha.
And that is what power can do. And again, I doubt if there was an intention to grant democracy to Nigeria because it was the military that established the two parties, the NRC, led by Bashir Tofa, and the SDP by MKO. And that was a very brilliant election in Nigeria by virtue of option A4. But somewhere along the line, it was truncated. And I've read before that IBB also came out to say he was not the only one that took that decision. I agree with him. Maybe some Obas and Emirs were involved, you see. And that brings us to another solid point that there are owners of Nigeria and there are citizens of Nigeria. So Professor Aworawo should not be bothered that they are all coming together now to launch a book. It's all about power game. And I think the electorate should be the one that should wake up and allow wisdom to guide them. And talking about the Osun State election, it's like the others. PDP swept all the 30 local government elections, even though APC decided not to be part of the election because the Attorney General of the Federation warned that it will not be legal, knowing that a decision of the Court of Appeal reinstated the former officers that were in office, and there was an attempt to return to office, which led to killing of about 8 and things. So it's still all about power game, the state of the nation. It's all about power. And I don't know what will happen now, whether we'll move in the direction of the fact that an election has taken place, because I understand that those who are the beneficiaries of the decision of the Court of Appeal are still planning to resume in office on Monday. But please, let's remember the destructions that visited Rivers State when there was a similar scenario.
Of lives and properties.
Exactly. So, I think at this point in time, we should begin to practice democracy with the concept of the rule of law and decency in the country. But I hope that will come sooner than expected. So.
Yemi Adamolekun.
I'll start from from his last point, that we should practice democracy with the concept of the rule of law and decency. And my question is how? Like, what's the precedent that supports that? What's the environment that rewards that? What our environment rewards is Jaguda politics, is far anything from rule of law and decency. And I think, which for me, I agree with your earlier point around the role of citizens, that citizens must decide that we want something different. And it's a hard process, it's a hard ask, because we talk about democracy, but we must also realize that for a lot of our citizens, democracy equals elections. That's the understanding of the fact that we're in a democracy. So if we don't invest time and energy in teaching citizens around our political history, what it means to be in a democracy, what power they get by the fact that we are in a democracy, and how to use it, then we're still on a long journey. On my way here, I was reading an article about how the attorney generals, the Democratic attorney generals, have been meeting since before elections in the US, planning for Trump 2.0 in case it came up. And that's the power of opposition, because they understand that by default, by design, Trump's policies are going to be different from theirs. So we need to be ready to use the instruments of the law, which is what we have, to challenge him if his policies are illegal or unconstitutional.
Just like the governor of Maine said.
Exactly, see you in court, exactly. So until we think of democracy in that sense, beyond waiting for something to happen, I think what we have is literally what we still will have for a while to come. And that takes me to the IBB story. I was in Abuja on Thursday, and when I decided to go...
Did you contribute? Did you donate money?
Heck no.
No?
No.
Well, just wanted to be sure. But there's nothing wrong in donating, right?
No, but I didn't, because
you didn't. Okay.
There was, I mean, first of all, the plan for the presidential library, I mean, there's a whole debate around the fact it was a military dictator. Can he have a presidential library? I mean, just by the definition of it, it's a place to keep your papers, your documents that people can learn from. So his title, regardless, I don't fundamentally see a problem. But I think also contextual about the people who did donate. These are people that, this is not the first time that they're giving him money. So the narrative around that, some people suddenly woke up and are giving IBB money and we should all be upset about it, the facts don't support that. From Folorunsho Alakija to Otto Eze, who said clearly that He made me who I am as a successful businessman, and this is me giving him back. But anyway, when I chose to go, I wanted to be a witness to history. In my view, I thought it would be probably the last time that all our surviving generals will be at a public function. General Buhari decided not to attend. Either as
he was just being Buhari, but go ahead.
Well, either as a matter of principle or...
That's okay.
And that's okay.
That's right.
Perfectly
I
okay.
said, in good or bad, he was just being
Buhari.
That's okay.
Either as a matter of principle or as someone is still carrying a grudge from what IBB did to him. But I'm glad maybe that I didn't process it fully when I decided to go, because really that's where I parked my decision to go, be a witness to history. But I think the one anchor that I would use is people's surprise that a Tinubu would not arrest an IBB. And I'm wondering, you arrest someone if you have a belief in the rule of law. The current president hasn't shown much belief in the rule of law, in my view, or decency, to use Mr. Ologun's words. So for people to suddenly think he would arrest an IBB or not be there surprises me. Number two, the role of what a Tinubu could have done if he was a different kind of leader is what Professor Aworawo alluded to. Use the moment not as a laughing kakaka moment, but a moment of sober reflection of the journey that we have come through, of what this means, that even him, who this man caused to go into exile, I then chose to come back here and blah, 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 and use that to weave a story, put a nation together. And he couldn't do it because he just couldn't, didn't have the I guess maybe not just framed, even in his own mind, the importance of the moment. But I think then lastly, what we should take away from this is also that we are a nation that doesn't do well with history, which is what I thought was funny about Babangida's grand library project. The thing for me was quite ostentatious for a presidential library in Minna, which is, it's not in
Abuja or Lagos.
Oh, exactly. But the whole idea of the fact that we like this idea of a presidential library, but we don't like history. We don't teach history. And this was a moment that the current president could have used to help tie that together so people understand the history and then give us a picture of what we can do together moving forward in a Nigeria that works for all of us. But we're still very far from that. But I hope this book starts people having that conversation so we can collectively heal from the pain, the trauma of not just IBB and June 12, but multiple things. From Biafra, we don't talk about Biafra either. So from Biafra to now, the many things that have happened that people are dealing with. And then lastly, Madam Speaker, love it. I still love it. I'm really just so proud of her. I'm proud of her composure. I'm proud of the way that she has chosen to fight. She has chosen not to be bullied into resigning. She has chosen to maintain her stance as the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly. As Wadoki, an APC leader, said, it's the same House of Assembly that voted Obasa as Speaker. They have turned around and said, we don't want you. Why is that such a difficult thing? Number one. Number two, on the issue of the DSS, I did see the letter, and for the sake of argument, let's say they did invite the DSS. If I invite you to my house to protect me, you protect me on my terms. You don't then harass me. And so they're not wanting them to sit and and blocking their offices goes quite counter to the spirit of the letter that they wrote. So my view is that the DSS decided to be taking instructions from other quarters, and it'll be interesting to find out what those quarters are. Secondly, the issue about Lagosians, indigenous Lagosians. Obasa being from Abeokuta is not new. Tinubu wasn't from Lagos, so it's not a first thing. But I think the gravitas that Madam Speaker also brings to that is that she's a Lagosian. And I think more important than, honestly, these side things is the fact that she was duly elected. Now, if APC wants to be doing zoning, Lagos West, Lagos this, you should have thought about that when this impeachment process started. And you will have planned it so you know the person you're going to replace Obasa with. So the fact that you didn't do your homework properly in that regard, you now want to turn upside down a duly constituted, constitutional, lawful process because she doesn't check that box? No. And I'm just a public notice. So I don't know, Madam Miranda, but with a few other women-led CSOs, we did go and pay a courtesy visit to her before somebody decides they want to use that as a gist. Let me tell you, we did go and pay a courtesy visit to her when this started, just to let her know that we're behind her. It's not that I know her, but I'm proud that she was duly elected, and by her posture, she has chosen to fight. And the Lagos State House of Assembly members have said very clearly that they are behind her and they're standing with her. So that's a really good thing.
Well, I think, thank you very much. These points are the cogent points. There is a point hinted on by Professor Aworawo, which I think we should expatiate. By the way, thank you for bringing up the essence of Presidential Library. I've had a few messages on social media asking what's his obsession with it. It does have a sense, a place where you keep documents for somebody who has been president of the country, but it has to be used well and not abused. But there's an issue that we talk about less in our whole polity at the state of the nation of our politics, as Professor Aworawo termed it, which is the role of leadership. Be it from those that went to the IBB event, where those leaders, none of them had the clarity of mind and the courage of voice to say, let us give a 1 minute silence for all those who lost their lives in June 12. Or as you rightly put it, for somebody to say, here we are, this is a great moment of reconciliation in Mandela's way, which I'm not a big fan of, I'm a man of conflict. But generally speaking, to say, let us appreciate what we've gone through and let us thank God that we are alive, since we're always throwing God factor, and let us pray that it doesn't happen in the future. I think it was a missed opportunity that could have been used. And that's a leadership issue. By the same token, the leadership issue that the leaders of Lagos State, you greeted the GAC for their effort. I am not impressed with the GAC. I am not impressed with all the leaders of Lagos State government and political party because of their inability to think things through before they act. Surely a group of people that wants to impeach a speaker, any speaker, let alone a speaker as popular and as influential, as indulged, as anything you want, as pampered as Obasa, surely some people should have the vision to think it through that if we take step A, what are the possible consequences? You see, this lack of thinking through when you manage a commonwealth is a big problem for Nigeria. And it's the same problem of not thinking through that affects Osun State. Surely the AGF, the IGP, the governor of the state should have said to themselves, let's think it through. Let us avoid this kind of situation. I go back to Lagos State. I've said it elsewhere, but let me say again that people need to remember that the minimum qualification to join the DSS is a bachelor's degree. So if you send Nigerian graduates to a place and they cannot decipher between who invited them and who they're defending against,
and what they should be doing.
We're in trouble. Let us see all the ones that went there as zombies. I know, because of my role, that when you send DSS in operation, there is a senior officer in a command room. Who is that person that could not see what is going on and say, okay, let's call back, let's roll back? And the assembly members...
also assuming that they were following just the letter of the spirit of the letter.
But surely when they got there, they saw the speaker, they saw the legislators. Somebody should have said, we are the legislators.
No,
does it take so much to be able to do that?
But again, you're missing the point.
Yes.
You're assuming that they were responding just to the letter.
I'm talking of their sense of being servants of the state. And even they cannot be servants of the state, of the institution, some decorum, which we need to talk about in our society.
Fair point.
This decorum issue that was lacked by the members of Lagos State Assembly. They were singing. What did they sing about? They're not supposed to be doing a luta. They're elected members.
Was it not staff that were singing?
No, it was the legislators.
Oh, I thought it was the staff in the balcony.
No,
but look at them, staff in the balcony.
No, they joined them, but the staff were singing. They were pushing and things like that. We need to talk about history, but also we need to talk about decorum. I think, and these little things do matter. This idea of decorum, this idea of what should somebody say in public, how should an institutional person act and not act. Until we get to those places and identify people name by name. There's so many people in the Lagos State of Assembly, they're anonymous. Nobody knows them. In a place like Lagos, if you're a member of the House of Assembly, surely you should be known for speeches, for some intervention, not intervention of distributing God knows what, but some legislative act that you are known for. Who knows? These people, we need to check their gravity, their gravitas as legislators. Are they acting because one day they woke up and they found Obasa not desirable anymore? Or somebody pushed a button and they're acting? I think these issues, Lagosians need to start thinking about it as a matter. But be it as it may, we're here. Yemi is happy that we have a Madam Speaker.
And I think, as I said, again, obviously the gender one, the first elected one in Lagos. And so it is a milestone in that regard. But at the heart of it is really that due process was followed. And number two... And
that is the point.
Yeah, and then number two, you have a Madam Speaker...
Whether they did it out of freedom or not, at least on surface, it was followed.
And that's the thing. In all this, she has resigned 6 times. Nobody has said she stole money, and nobody has said that the process was not due. On Friday, for example, one of our partner CSOs had a co-creation workshop with speakers from about 10 other states. And as host speaker, she was there. And I was very proud to see her in the midst of 10 men as the only female one. But it's true. It is what it is.
You know, I think
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
You know, if you go back to the case of the National Assembly, it was a time when Saraki was to be removed at all costs. A lot of drama took place. So that gives us the color of the Nigerian democracy.
Individuals matter. Okay, let's go to another story. Apparently, the death earlier this week of the leader of Pan-Nigerian Delta Forum, the long-time Ijaw Nation activist, Chief Edwin Clark, has created a significant gulf in the affairs of the oil-rich region. For more than 60 years, Chief Ike Clark, who died at the age of 97, bestrode the socio-political and economic terrains of the Niger Delta, and indeed that of Nigeria like a colossus, lending his powerful voice to issues of national concern. Part of his public service resume includes stewardship of Nigeria's Federal Commissioner for Information during the regime of former General Yakubu Gowon. Exit a titan. Edward Clark. The second one in a week. In fact, the last time I was saying let them stop dying, but then it doesn't depend on them. But you know, generally speaking, there should be a view not to die.
He's 97.
He's 97. Well, but people are living longer this way. I mean, we know they were going to die, but it's still sad to go. Edward Clark is, love him or loathe him, he was a strong personality. Mr. Ologun.
Thank you very much. And I pick you from being a strong personality. He really stood out for environmental issues in the South-South, for nationalism, and a man who was known to be very blunt in driving the advocacy for good governance. And the big question now is, are we going to allow the labor of these heroes past to manifest in the creation of commonwealth for common good? Because even though Edward Clark is gone, the governor of Bayelsa, Diri, is still requesting for 30% derivation as against 13% derivation, claiming that the land is theirs, but the oil belongs to the federal government, and that the benefits of the wealth of Nigeria should be seen in all. So we should all learn that it's only God that is immortal, who won't leave office. So these elder statements have come. They've added their values. Last week it was another elder, Adebanjo, that left the stage. And whether we like it or not, more players will leave the stage. So what will you be remembered for? Is it for the values you've added, the problems you have solved, or the complications you have created?
That you have created for others.
Those are my questions.
Prof.
Yeah, we'll miss him.
Were you close to Chief Clark at all?
I wasn't close. I was close to the brother.
Because I know you had one Clark collection.
J.P. Clark.
I was J.P. Clark.
John Pepper Clark. When they launched this autobiography, I was to be
exactly.
I missed it.
Yes.
They were calling my phone. They were calling a number that was not active.
Yeah. And they put your name on some of the things.
Yes.
Before we started.
But a great man, advocate for equity and environmental sustainability, and advocate for Niger Delta. And of course,
and in Niger Delta, Ijaw.
Yes, from Kiagbodo. And also, for true federalism. They were not just talking about 13% being 50% or something. They were talking holistically of how the Constitution places so much power under the federal government and how, there should be a Constitution review that would, address that. I was in Abuja a couple of years ago, and we're talking about the amnesty program, and somebody who knew about how it evolved mentioned, because at that time when the process was on, Yar'Adua was president.
Yes.
Jonathan was, vice president. How Jonathan would go to the creeks.
Yes.
How sometimes Clark
would lead him
there. They would go together and helicopter fly, meet all those militants and all that. And there was a measure of stability after all of those efforts. So we remembered for so many things. But something that troubles me is this. That generation tends to have more vocal people, more courageous people.
Yeah.
That's Soyinka's generation.
Yes.
Yes, that is Adebanjo generation.
Yes.
My former Commonwealth Secretary General. Yes.
I'm trying not to call the living together or the dead, but
yes. No, that is their generation.
But it's a very clear point.
Who are not looking at how much you give them and all that. Who are just courageous, who just stand for something.
There is a book written by Toladini on Class 30, he calls it. Okay. Those who were born in that year. There's a chronicle of all them and how their character is so different than those who came later.
I look at the generation after that, and I ask myself, for instance, Niger Delta now, who will speak, except maybe myself.
Well,
if you maybe Chike Ogia.
No, you took it out of my mouth. Let's start from you, since you are the one here. Let's not look for who is not here.
I'm not sure I will have many people who will share my thoughts.
I will be there with you, even when I disagree with you. I will be there.
So,
I think
so that is the point, and that's why we will miss these people. And we need more of leaders like this.
Like this. I really want to thank you.
And the advocacy they carry out, shapes policy, governance.
Like that.
See how much he harassed Okowa.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he harassed. Okowa would have been even more extreme.
Yes,
but for his harassment.
Like I want to really thank you for bringing out this generational thing, because I really believe that the history of Nigeria is a generational story that is affecting us. We started this country with a generation of dreamers, visionary people. The Aworawo up to these ones. The ones who had big dreams, gave big speeches, were passionate, were bold and confrontational. And they went until, the likes of Gani Fawemi, the likes of Awojobi. Then came another generation, the generation of the squanderers, I call them. The ones that just came in, just spent money. They had no big vision, no big speeches. Then after them came the generation of hustlers, of beggars and just taking things and just sitting there.
Have an idea of...
Well, people should do some homework. People should do some homework to see how this generation... The generation, well, let's say this, the generation of squanderers are the ones who came with boots and guns.
Okay.
And, they just came and squandered the money and all the goodwill. Then after them, the generation of survivors and hustlers that were just around them hoping for a bit of something to get along with. They started with crumbs. Then they started building mansions. And I'm not against wealth. What I'm against is lack of vision, lack of boldness, and lack of decorum in anything that we do. If we can get leaders that have vision, that have boldness, and have decorum, I'm sure the country will be a better place. But that is that.
Is Yemi not commenting on power plaque?
No, let's leave Yemi. We'll come back. Let's stay, because Mr. Ologun mentioned Governor Diri's derivation request in Bayelsa State. So let's stay in South and say that Governor Diri of Bayelsa State on Saturday called for a 30% derivation fund for crude oil producing states, up from the current figure of 13%, which he described as deprivation. Speaking at a Project Commission event in Yenogua in Bayelsa State capital, Governor Diri maintained that 13% is a deprivation rather than a blessing to the people of the Niger Delta. He said that 13% represented 85% of deprivation to the region and called on the federal government to activate the 30% sharing formula being proposed at the National Assembly on value-added task. So deprivation, not derivation.
I mean, the truth of the matter for me on this is it really about more money? So, I mean, you can have a conversation around the principle of the states own the resources, and we should take a percentage of what we own, or what we own, and give it to the federal for maintaining federal infrastructure.
Yes.
And I guess that's what's at the heart of this derivation conversation.
Yes.
Am I correct?
No, you're correct.
Okay, very
you know, in their mind, they say, we actually own it. If you're going to take it from us because we're one, at least give us something substantial.
Yeah.
That is the crux of the matter.
Which, in what we call true federalism, quote unquote, makes sense and holds water. But what I always ask is, from the states and what the resources they've gotten, from things like the Niger Delta Development Commission that would now turn into party pack that every other zone now has. It's not about more money. It's about, to your point, about vision, about big vision, big ideas, about how do I make the lives of my people better, not how do I get more money to squander. And I think that, for me, always lets their advocacy land very hollow. Because it's not to say, look what I've done with 13. If only I had 30. You've given me, exactly. If I had 30, like, as in, this place would be like Dubai or something.
And that's the problem. I'm going to keep you last because that's you have interest in that. You're a stakeholder. Let's have an objective and principled conversation from the start.
I endorse those submissions. You see, there is what you call the concept of prudence in wealth management, which is focused on creating values that will bring development. I recall the episode Off Your Mic, when the present president of Senate, Akpabio, was invited to the National Assembly, the 8th Assembly, to come and justify the money that has been released to NDDC. And when he started pointing to some of those who have collected from that money, he was instructed to off the mic. So we still have the big issue of corruption in the land. And what Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says is that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. You see, the money we have spent in this country, if some other countries with meaningful vision have access to it, they would have made a very fantastic use of it. So I want us to, and when we even talk about this derivation and the fact that regions should manage their resources, it's an assignment. When you talk of true federalism, it's an assignment for the National Assembly. We have 109 senators, we have 360 as House member, and Section 4 of our Constitution says that they are empowered to make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good government in Nigeria. So it's their prerogative. But is it about, when IBB was talking about national interest, is it really about national interest in Nigeria? And that's the big question. I mean, if from about 12.12 trillion naira total indebtedness in March 2015, we are now in the threshold of about 140 trillion.
What have we done?
Poverty should not even be any trace that should be seen in Nigeria.
How many percent do you want?
I think there are two things.
Yes.
The first is the derivation itself. There is a good case for it. Nigeria is not a federal state as presently structured. It is unitary. When Nigeria's federal structure was first established in 1954 Little Constitution, there were provisions for this with revenue allocation. The regions were getting 50% of whatever they gave. And then 30% to the regions. There were 3 regions. What that meant was that effectively a region was getting 60% of what it produced. Only 20% went to the federal government. It was truncated, after the First Republic was brought to an end in 1966. So it's not something that is entirely new that we are talking about. And in 2005, when there was a conference...
So it's not a revolution, it's a restoration.
Yes. That 2005 conference also recommended from 13 to 25 to over a period of... In fact, we have even passed the years that will have got to 50% by that. So, but the second issue is the issue Yemi just pointed out.
What have they done
when you get them, what do you do with it? Yes, that... You see, the two, if the money is available and you have people with vision,
you say give them more.
Yes. You say, look, go and see what they have done with 13%. If they get 50, this place will become, paradise, so to speak.
So governors of oil producing area, our advice for you to use the one you have judiciously as much as possible, then we shall stand with you to get more. You've been watching This Day Live. A very big thank you to everybody, to our lovely panel. You've been watching this day live, the Sunday talk show on Arise News. I'm Anthony Killer, and from the entire team in Lagos, it's bye for now. Thanks very much for watching.